A cold wind cut across the empty street as the city neared midnight, and the bus stop flickered under a dying streetlight. Clara, exhausted from a 14-hour hospital shift, wrapped her thin jacket tighter around her shivering body. Her shoes were soaked from the slush, her fingers numb, and her pay barely enough to afford a cab. She had seen 3 emergencies back-to-back, held the hand of a dying old man, and comforted a frightened child. Yet here she was, alone in the cold, waiting for a bus that was already 40 minutes late. She kept telling herself she would be fine, even though her lips were turning pale. A black luxury car slowed down near the curb. At first she did not notice it, she was focused on the freezing air stabbing through her clothes. But the car didn't drive away. Instead, the window slowly rolled down. A man in a long dark coat leaned slightly forward. His voice was deep but strangely gentle as it cut through the silence. "Are you all right?" he asked. Clara startled, stepping back. She wasn't used to strangers stopping for her, especially not men driving cars worth more than her yearly salary. "I'm fine," she murmured, though her voice trembled with the cold. He studied her shivering hands, the thin uniform she still wore, and the tired heaviness in her eyes. His sharp features softened with concern. Without another moment of hesitation, he opened the door and stepped out into the icy air. The man's presence was commanding, but not threatening. He approached her slowly, as if not wanting to frighten her. "You're freezing," he said. "You shouldn't be out here like this." Clara forced a half smile. "The bus will come." She didn't want pity. She had worked hard her entire life, taking double shifts, paying off loans, sending a little money to her younger brother. She wasn't someone who asked for help. But the man frowned slightly, glancing down the empty street. "The buses aren't running this late. A storm warning was issued an hour ago." She blinked. She hadn't even checked her phone. The exhaustion had swallowed everything else. He took a breath, then said words she never expected. "You're coming with me." She instantly shook her head. No, I can't just get into a stranger's car." Her voice cracked but she stood her ground. He nodded as if he understood, then reached into his coat and handed her his business card. She looked down and nearly lost her breath. His name was Alexander Hale. She recognized it immediately. Billionaire investor, CEO of one of the largest medical companies in the country. A man whose face often appeared on financial news, though she had never imagined seeing him at a bus stop. "I don't want anything from you," he said quietly. "I just can't leave knowing you might collapse from the cold." His sincerity disarmed her. She hesitated, her body trembling harder now. Pride battled with survival, and survival finally won. She nodded reluctantly. "All right." He guided her to the warm car, making sure she didn't slip on the icy pavement. When she sank into the heated seat, she let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. As the car pulled away, Alexander watched her discreetly. She kept rubbing her hands, warming them slowly. He noticed the small scars on her fingers, the sign of a nurse who handled endless emergencies. "Long shift?" he asked softly. Clara nodded. The hospital was short-staffed again. "I stayed late." Her words were simple, but Alexander heard the unspoken burden behind them: exhaustion, dedication, and quiet suffering. He admired people like her more than any millionaire he had ever worked with. After a moment, he spoke again. "Do they always make you go home like this? In this weather?" She shrugged. "They don't make me. I can't afford a car. And taxis are too expensive." He felt a tightening in his chest. He knew his company supplied equipment to dozens of hospitals, including hers. Yet he had never truly seen the life of the people who kept those hospitals alive. When they reached a safe residential area, Clara gave directions to her small apartment. He parked outside, but before she stepped out, he said, "You shouldn't have to struggle like this. People like you keep the world standing." She looked at him in confusion, unsure why a billionaire would say something so heartfelt to her. "I'm just a nurse," she whispered. He shook his head. "You're not just anything." She thanked him softly and opened the door, ready to disappear back into her quiet life. But he stopped her again. "Clara," he said, remembering her name from her tag, "this isn't the end. I want to help you." She froze. "Why?" He smiled faintly. "Because you help everyone else." She didn't know what he meant yet, or how deeply this simple encounter would shape her future. But as she stepped out of the car, the warmth of his kindness followed her, melting a part of the cold no heater ever could. a sharp winter wind swept across the deserted street as Maya stood at the bus stop, hugging her thin sweater tightly against her body. The night was brutal, the kind of cold that crept through fabric and sank straight into bone. Her shift at the hospital had ended over an hour ago, and she was supposed to be home by now, warming her hands in front of her small heater. But the bus was delayed again, and she didn't have the money to book a rideshare. She tried to keep moving, breathing into her frozen fingers, but it was clear she was losing the battle against the biting cold. She whispered to herself, just 10 more minutes, even though she knew no such promise was guaranteed. Her entire body trembled from exhaustion. She had worked 3 double shifts this week, covered for 2 sick colleagues, and barely eaten anything all day because she didn't have the time. Yet she still stood here alone in the freezing silence, waiting for a bus that may never come. A sleek black car rolled up to the curb, slowing before stopping right in front of her. At first, Maya ignored it. No one ever stopped for her. But the car didn't drive away. The tinted window lowered, revealing a man whose face held a look of both concern and command. He had sharp features softened by warmth in his eyes. His voice, deep and firm, carried through the icy air. "You're coming with me." Maya blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. I'm sorry," she stammered. She backed away a step, instinctively protective. The man stepped out of the car, the cold not seeming to bother him at all. His coat was thick and expensive, contrasting sharply with her worn nurse's uniform. He approached slowly, keeping his hands visible so she wouldn't feel threatened. "You're freezing," he said calmly. "And the buses aren't running anymore because of the storm alert. You can't stay out here." "I'll be fine," Maya insisted, though her voice shook with cold. She didn't want pity. She didn't trust strangers, especially not ones who appeared out of nowhere and spoke with authority. Her instincts told her to stay cautious. She took a deep breath and met his gaze. "I don't know you. I can't go anywhere with you." He nodded, as if expecting her refusal. Then he handed her a business card. She looked down at the crisp white card and felt her breath catch. Jonathan Reeve. The name was instantly recognizable. The billionaire philanthropist. The man whose foundation funded half the medical programs she had trained under. A man whose face had appeared on documentaries, magazine covers, and hospital plaques. He wasn't just wealthy, he was someone who saved lives on a global scale. Someone far removed from the cold bus stop struggles of a regular nurse like her. "I understand your hesitation," Jonathan said gently. "But I can't drive away knowing you might lose consciousness out here. Come with me, just for tonight. I'll get you home safely." His tone carried no arrogance, only certainty. A certainty that unexpectedly made her feel safe. Her pride fought to hold on, but her body felt weaker by the second. She couldn't deny the truth. She needed help. She nodded slowly, still cautious but no longer resistant. Jonathan opened the car door for her, and the warmth hit her like a wave. She nearly sighed at the sensation of heat on her freezing skin. As the car pulled back into the street, he glanced at her with a look of quiet concern. "How long were you standing there?" he asked. "Almost an hour," she admitted. "I didn't check the alerts. I just wanted to get home." Jonathan studied her trembling hands and the fatigue etched into her face. "You shouldn't be working this hard," he said softly. She gave a tired smile. "Nurses always work this hard." "I know," he replied, his voice heavy. "But that doesn't mean you should suffer for it." The sincerity in his tone surprised her. Most people admired nurses, but few understood the physical and emotional toll. Somehow, this billionaire sitting beside her did. He leaned back, observing her as though seeing everything she tried to hide, her exhaustion, her silent resilience, her quiet sacrifices. "Where do you live?" he asked. She hesitated, then gave him her address. As they drove through the quiet streets, Maya felt the shivering ease, her muscles slowly relaxing. She hadn't realized how close she had been to collapsing. She watched the city pass by through foggy windows and felt something strange, gratitude mixed with confusion. Why would someone like him stop for someone like her? When they reached her small apartment building, she thanked him softly, ready to slip out of the car and fade back into her simple life. But he gently touched her arm, stopping her. "Maya," he said, remembering her name from her badge, "I didn't stop tonight by accident." She looked at him in confusion. "You spend your life saving others. Let someone help you for once." His words hit deep, breaking through the walls she had built around her independence. She swallowed hard, not knowing how to respond. I want to see you again, Jonathan continued. Not because you need saving, but because you deserve someone who sees everything you give to the world. Her heart pounded. No one had ever said something like that to her. Before she could speak, he smiled warmly. Get some rest. We'll talk soon. As she stepped out of the car, she felt warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the heater. She had no idea how this single night would change her life, but something inside her knew it already had. The next morning arrived slowly, with pale sunlight filtering through the thin curtains of Maya's small apartment. She had barely slept. Her body was warm under the blankets, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the stranger from last night, the billionaire who had appeared out of nowhere, offered help without hesitation, and spoken to her as if she mattered more than the world ever made her feel. She replayed his words again and again, wondering if she had imagined the entire encounter. When her alarm rang at 6 a.m., she forced herself out of bed. Duty didn't care about exhaustion. Hospitals didn't pause for personal confusion. She tied her hair, put on her worn nurse's shoes, and headed out. As she stepped into the chilly morning air, she pulled her thin jacket tighter and walked toward the bus stop. But today, something felt different. She was alert, expecting the night's magic to fade in daylight, expecting everything to return to the same routine she had lived for years. But it didn't. A sleek car again slowed beside her. Her breath caught. The window rolled down, revealing Jonathan Reeve. His expression softened when he saw her, as if he had been waiting. Good morning, Maya, he said. Heading to work, she stared at him, stunned. She hadn't expected to see him again. She thought his promise to talk soon had been just kindness, a gentle way to end the night. You didn't have to come, she managed to say quietly. I wanted to, he replied, opening the door for her the same way he had last night. Let me take you. This time, she didn't hesitate as long. She slipped into the warm car, feeling a strange mixture of comfort and disbelief. As they drove through the waking city, Jonathan glanced at her. I did some reading last night, he said. Your hospital has a severe staffing shortage. Nurses are covering double shifts every week. She nodded. That's normal for us. It shouldn't be, he said firmly. She looked out the window to avoid the intensity in his voice. She wasn't used to people advocating for her or her profession. Most billionaires donated money, but few understood what everyday workers actually faced. As they neared the hospital, Jonathan slowed the car. I'd like to see where you work, he said. Maya nearly choked. Inside, now, it's chaotic, crowded, noisy. That's exactly why I want to see it. His tone held no judgment, only genuine interest. She didn't know how to refuse. She felt oddly protective of the place that had drained her for years yet also shaped her into who she was. When they reached the entrance, he stepped out with her. Nurses rushed back and forth, ambulances pulled in one after another, and the usual morning chaos unfolded. Jonathan observed everything quietly. He watched a nurse calm an elderly patient, watched another rush to restock empty shelves. Then he looked at Maya with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. You all handle more than most people ever will, he said softly. You deserve better. She shrugged, unsure what to say. This was her world. Hard work, exhaustion, limited resources. That was all she had ever known. Just then, an emergency call echoed through the hallway and Maya instinctively ran toward it. Jonathan watched her disappear behind the swinging doors, completely absorbed in helping a patient. He didn't know much about medicine, but he understood dedication. He saw how her face changed when she was working, focused, compassionate, unwavering. She wasn't just surviving, she was serving. Hours passed before she finally came out of the emergency ward. She found Jonathan still waiting in the small lobby, sitting on an uncomfortable chair, a cup of untouched coffee in his hand. She blinked in surprise. You waited. I told you, he said, standing. This wasn't an accident. Something inside her softened. No one had ever waited for her before. Her life was always about waiting for others, patients, buses, opportunities she never received. Seeing someone wait for her felt strangely healing. I'm sorry, she said. I got caught up. I expected that, he replied with a small smile. I learned more by watching you than I would in any boardroom. Before she could respond, her supervisor approached. Maya, you're off for the rest of the day. Someone covered your shift. Maya was shocked. That never happened. Days off were rare treasures. She glanced at Jonathan, suspicious. Did you do something? His smile widened slightly. I may have spoken to the administration. Told them you needed rest. And that their best nurse shouldn't collapse from exhaustion. She didn't know whether to laugh or scold him. Jonathan, I can't. Just. You can, he said gently. Come with me. I want to show you something. He drove her across the city to a tall glass building she had never entered. When they walked inside, she saw polished floors, modern offices, and walls decorated with awards. This was his empire, the world he commanded with ease. But he led her past it all, straight to a large room filled with architects, planners, and documents pinned to boards. This, he said, gesturing around them, is where new hospital facilities are designed. She looked at him, puzzled. Why bring me here? Because I want to build something with you, he said. A program for nurses, better pay, better transport options, safer shifts, mental health support. And I want your help. You know the reality far better than anyone in this building. Her heart stopped, then raced faster than ever. Why me? Because last night, he said softly, I realize the world is carried by people like you. And it's time someone helped carry you. For the first time in years, Maya felt seen, not as a tired nurse lost in the system, but as someone who could change it. She didn't know where this path with Jonathan would lead, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life had shifted, and whatever came next, she would no longer walk alone.